What happens when you give a media personality and a sex therapist a podcast? You get Spill the Tea, a bold, unfiltered space where no topic is off limits. From sex and relationships to the messy, hilarious, and heartbreaking realities of life, Will Nash and Maria Orrego serve up real talk with expert insight, hot takes, and a whole lot of tea.
We're here and it's happening. I cannot believe it. It's Spill the Tea, episode 1 with Will and Maria. Is this actually happening?
We are doing this after months of talking and months of planning. We are finally here at our first episode.
I think it's all going to go down. It's all going to go down on this first episode. So if you are watching us, if you're listening for the first time, thank you so much for, giving us a test drive. And hopefully you'll stick around for a long time.
I hope so. I hope that keep people entertained with our random conversation.
Completely random.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Will, why don't you start with kind of helping people understand how the heck we got here? How did a media personality and a sex therapist create a podcast? Why are we here?
And this is just it, right? What happens when you throw a media personality and a sex therapist into a room? We're about to find out, as you do, but the behind the scenes story is, so I was working in radio and I had a feature on the station I was working on called Spill the Tea. And what it was is listeners would send in their relationship questions, really just any dilemmas or scenarios that they were in where they were seeking out advice. And I'm not like you. I'm not actually a therapist. I just played one on the radio.
Which I loved. I loved listening to you play a therapist on the radio. It's the best.
But I will say in my real life, I've definitely always been that friend to my friends that, Will, I'm in this situation. I'm in this relationship. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm stressed. I'm anxious, whatever, right? And so I've always kind of become that shoulder for my friends. So it's kind of funny how it ended up turning into this feature that, did pretty well on the radio. And one day I saw my DMs and Maria slid into my DMs and
That's the most embarrassing thing out loud. I slid into your DMs. I did. You are the only person I have ever slid into DMs on, I think, though. So you should
okay. I guess we'll find out more about that as this podcast continues. But, and, to be honest, like, we're joking around with the DMs thing, but you were super sweet. And you said that you had listened to this feature I'd done on the radio. And you were kind of curious to see if there was ever a possibility of, working together in some capacity because you enjoyed listening to that feature that we did. So thank you so much for saying that, because that still means a lot to me. And here's the thing, like when you work in media, when you work in radio, a lot of times, a lot of people, as bad as it sounds to say it like this, want to get on the radio or have been told they have a great voice for radio. All of these things, right? Like that's always like a red flag when someone says I have a great voice for the radio to probably not bring them onto your show.
That sounds a bit cringy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is, but it happened, right? And the funny thing was, I was like, okay, you know what? Like, she's legit. She's a sex therapist. I checked out your Instagram. You could tell that you're very particular on your brand and kind of what you're putting out there, and that's always been important to me as well. And so we talked. I was like, well, let's just see how it goes. Like, maybe I bring you onto my show. Maybe it would be a train wreck. Maybe, it would not work out the way that I'd seen it working out. But what I loved is immediately you got it. You knew the amount of time that I was allotted to talk about, whatever it was we talked about in that first day. Immediately, I felt like we almost immediately jived in that sense. And then, so you kind of came on again and again and again, essentially, until I left my job there back in May of last year. And then I said to you, okay, you know what? This kind of sucks because we were starting something really cool. I'm starting a new job in another industry, but I think we're going to revisit this at some point.
Well, I think it's beautiful, too, is that a lot of people asked you to revisit it, which I think is really amazing, that you had this beautiful, magical segment in radio about Spill the Tea that people really respected. And I will say, too, the reason I thought a lot about sliding into your DMs, this was not kind of like an off the cuff, like, oh, I'm going to do this. It was actually like a huge thought process because I had listened to you for a while and I had listened to this segment for a while. And I actually found that the way that you handled the questions, and I've said this to you before in private, the way that you handled the questions was so professional, so respectful, with so much kindness and love that I actually really appreciated your take on it, because I had heard other segments like this on the radio, which I will not name, that are mean, right? That they like mostly like they make fun of the person asking this question instead of actually trying to either help them, understand them, really listen to what they're asking. So when I did slide into your DMs, I thought we were going to be a good fit because of that, because you were going to always use kind of that kind aspect of yourself instead of trying to tear someone down for maybe making a bad sexual or relationship decision.
Making those bad decisions that people can make, right? Well, first of all, I honestly, that meant a lot, and it still means a lot every time you say that you appreciated the way that I sort of took these controversial or salacious situations that people just go through. I
Yeah.
always wanted to make it a comfortable place. And if they wanted to be anonymous, they were allowed to be anonymous, or, even the listeners that would call in and offer their thoughts. Some were fine with their names, because some people had actually called in when they would hear these questions or hear these scenarios saying, listen, girl, we've been through this before, and, warning signs, do this, don't do that. This is just, that was their take. So it wasn't like I was just offering this wonderful advice. It allowed the listeners to chime in on it. And honestly, like that, in my last job that I worked in radio, and I was there for almost 4 years, I kind of became known as that, the spill the tea guy, because, now you hear that saying so much in TV, radio,
Yeah.
podcast, never, where I was working, like it wasn't happening as much as it is now. Right.
Exactly. And now you have a podcast. Now you get to spill the tea with your own twist to it on a podcast.
Have a little more fun with it. As much as I appreciate, if anyone happened to listen to the radio show and you're still here, thank you for still following all these months later. Having a little more freedom. Think there are, things that you can and can't say working in Canadian radio. And I think that this is going to be something that it's almost like the extended version of that, make it a little spicier, make it a little more fun with it. So I'm happy to be able to do that. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you decided to jump into my DMs that day. And it's been nothing but a great experience so far. And thank you for, coming along this ride with me.
So it's been super fun. I'm very excited for the things that we're going to talk about, the things we're going to explore, learn about each other, learn about the questions that people are going to bring to us as well. And I love the fact that we have this medium now to spill the tea.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to DMs, we are going to talk a little bit about DMs, just because that's kind of where you and I started on this episode of the Spill the Tea podcast. I've received a few DMs in my life.
Okay. Would you share the worst one you've gotten?
So the worst one I've gotten, I mean, it depends on what you mean as worst. Like, is worst like somebody, DMing me, telling me that I'm a horrible person, or is worst, receiving unsolicited photos?
I think that's how you interpret it, whatever you think is the worst for you. Because I mean, would it be worse to hear that you're a terrible person, or would it be worse to receive an unsolicited picture?
I'd rather receive the picture. I'd rather receive the photo as the truth of it, right?
Okay.
And I think that, that has happened before. From what I hear from some of my girlfriends, women get that quite a bit. Unsolicited things they did not ask for.
Can I say, I'm going to share this like really hilarious anecdote?
Yeah.
The first picture that I ever got like that was back in the day when we had MSN.
Really?
It was a long time ago. So when people think that this is new, it is not new. It has been going on ever since you could share pictures. And actually, I will say, it wasn't that the picture was sent to me. Their profile picture changed to that.
Now, that couldn't have been intentional.
No, it was.
It'd be one thing if they sent that photo to you, but to change your profile picture.
I don't think with MSN, again, if you're listening and you're a Gen Z, I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
We're old, but
yeah, exactly.
I don't think MSN had the feature of you able to send a picture.
No, I was going to say, I don't remember that, but I do remember the profile pictures. I remember the avatars, right?
Yeah, so that was intentional because I couldn't take pictures. It was intentional that while I was chatting with this person, their profile picture changed, which I thought was very strange. And I looked at it, and then I don't know if you remember I messed up, and the pictures were very small.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah.
You had to do
And,
the sprinting.
and you're like, that's a small photo, and that's all you had to say, right?
That's all
That's
I had to say.
all you had to say.
Yeah. So I will
Wow.
say, so that has been happening for a very long time. The
It's not
pictures of
new.
the unsolicited information that women do not need, by the way. As a sex therapist, I will tell you, please do not send those. They are unnecessary. And they do not
That's
drive to you getting laid.
the stories that I hear from my girlfriends who get these photos generally from men blows my mind. It's one of these things, right? Where it's like, why would you send someone? I could never imagine sending somebody a photo or even a message, like a steamy message, that I didn't think they would receive well. Like blindly sending somebody like that a message, like it's in my mind, it's only going to not work in your favor. It is different if you're both consenting to it.
Yeah,
Do whatever you want. That's your
sure.
business, right? Knowing that if you send something online, it could end up somewhere. Just saying that you got to be careful of who you send it to. But I couldn't imagine me like, this is the first time I've talked to someone. It's kind of cute. Maybe I'll, go take a photo of something and send it to him. Like because I wouldn't want it to not be well received. I'd want you to want it.
Think so. But you know, you're touching on something really important. I always feel like our sexual education, our sex education that we go through in school, first of
Yeah.
all, it's useless and we need to revamp that. But this also needs to be taught though. Like the desirability, the wanting, is it like going in the right direction? That has so much to do with that, because you're right. Am I reading this situation correctly that you
Yeah.
want this from me? Or am I just throwing this randomly into the dark and hoping that it lands somewhere? It is such a vulnerable thing to send. And you're right. I honestly think it's sometimes just ignorance.
I think it's ignorance, and I think that happens a lot. And I don't want to put anybody on blast, but I think that straight men generally are the worst at it. It's like, read the room. And I'm not even.
I love how you said I don't want to put anyone on blast, and then you fully just
I fully did.
you
So,
fully did. Good
yeah.
for you.
Okay, now all these straight men are going to be DMing us at the Spill the Tea pod saying, Will doesn't like straight men.
Well,
There's nothing wrong with straight men.
do you feel like queer men do it less? That's actually a great question. Do you think
They do it more.
okay. So it's
Yeah.
not just straight men then.
No, but I think that queer men who send messages, adult photos, whatever, to other queer men generally are okay with that.
Okay, so yeah, okay. So the
Yeah.
sending is more, but it's because
Yeah.
it's solicited and people want it, it's consensual, there's a
Yeah.
desire there. Okay,
I'm
that's
not saying that's everybody, but I'm just saying a lot of times men who are in the queer community tend to be more open to receiving that sort of content.
okay. I love that. That's great. Okay, so the unsolicited is what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
love this. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just being real. You must have heard this before.
No, I have. I think I misunderstood you when you said that that straight men do it more. I'm like, but queer men do it all the time as well.
Oh,
So
yeah,
I was
100%.
confused to that. No, it's more so the other side wanting to receive it is very different.
Yeah, not that I would ever send anything or ever receive anything like that.
You know what I think is hilarious now? We are going to post this episode. Everyone's going to be listening, and you are going to get so many pictures. I don't even want to go into our shared DMs right now.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's going to be a different place. You'll be like, Will, I'm not looking at it. You see it and you deal with that the way you want to deal with it,
You're going to have
right?
to add a filter. I'm going to have to send them to you of I think these are for you.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, right? Well, I don't know. Is it smooth though, truly, to send a DM to someone? Like, actually, I don't mean connecting, because we connected, through social media, but is that something people, I think a lot of people look at it as like a cop out or kind of cheap when you're trying to date someone or message someone. I think they look at it as kind of tacky.
I mean, it's safe, right? You've got this entire internet in front of you that's kind of protecting you from that person and that rejection, perhaps. So yeah, of course it's safer, it's more comfortable for people to do. I think also, and again, it depends your generation, right? Would I find it tacky to be asked out on a date over a DM? Yeah, I would. I think that would lack desire and that want for me. But in other generations, maybe they think it's like the best thing ever.
You know what, though? Can I just say this? If I was into a guy, like, I mean, I had a crush on him.
Yeah.
I thought he was attractive. He had, you know, a job and other things going on for himself. And he sent me a DM, like, about going out, like, actually, like, going on a date, like, getting together for dinner, getting together for coffee or a drink. I would be okay with that. Because I know, as someone who is single, I know how challenging it is. And I live in a smaller city to connect and meet with people. So I'm not talking like adult photos or sex or anything like that. I mean, like, generally, like, sending a message saying, hey, you know what? You seem like, you wouldn't write these words, and this could be a horrible example, but you seem like a cool guy. Would you want to grab a drink one time or go for a coffee? And if it was mutual and I was feeling it, I wouldn't be turned off by that, because I don't think that sometimes in this era of communication and social media and, Tinders and Hinge and Grinder and all the things, right? I think that people just don't know how to meet other people at times, because it is so hard out there.
I agree with you. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, this has just become spill the tea. Let's get Will some
Oh my
DMs.
God. I mean, I used to say on the radio with this actual feature, Spill the Tea, I would say my DMs are always open, right? So it is true. My DMs are always open, but we can block. We can block, we can delete. So, just like you can block and delete me, I can block and delete you.
I
But
love that. I think it's true though. Sliding into DMs it's the same as online dating, right? At the end of the day, if we think about it that way. If you're following someone on Instagram, Threads, whatever it is, and you slide into someone's DM and you seem genuine, kind, and like thoughtful, right? Like, don't just send a random like hi or you look hot. Like, no, like, actually send a substantial message that makes sense. I think a lot of people have. I mean, we've seen it in celebrities, right? A-listers, politicians, they've all come out and said, hey, this person slid into my DM. We started talking. There has been the controversial DMs that we don't need to like go, right? There's been that
well,
too.
it's funny to talk about celebrities, because when we were, kind of having a little meeting about what we're going to talk about on this episode for our first episode, thanks for being here, by the way, and Spill the Tea, is Nick Jonas. Like, Jonas Brothers fame, Camp Rock, still get jealous. He slid into, if you can believe it, Priyanka Chopra's DMs, and they are now married with a kid. I think just one kid, right?
I think
And
I have a daughter. And what I love about that story too is that there's an age difference. So he just like
there is
took
an
his
age.
shot. He was like, I am like going for it. And in his like wonderful defense, he didn't use his PR team or his assistants or anyone to be like, hey, can you hook us up? He did it himself. That's something to be like proud of.
It is. And the thing is with that situation was, people think, okay, Nick, like, at the time, like years ago when they were first getting together, Nick Jonas, again, big pop star with the Jonas Brothers, and, grew up in the spotlight and all this, Priyanka Chopra, like, at the time, not as many people in North America were familiar with her work, but she was a star in her own right. And it's only been, I'd say, the last like decade where she's done like a bunch of TV shows, a bunch of movies. And, so it's like, she was not quite as known in North America. She wasn't known in Hollywood at the time. So people were like, oh, like, I can't believe they did that. But she kind of had a little bit of, I guess, privacy, whereas she definitely does not have that now. But it's worked out for them so far. And there are situations, though, where DMs, not just with us, but with celebrities, can backfire. And there can be a little scandal with that. And the one that comes up from, I think it was a couple of years ago, and I think from a public perception now, he's gotten a little bit of grace, which I know some people probably take issue with. But Adam Levine of Maroon 5, he had his DMs leaked when he was cheating on, I think I can say it was cheating, or at least talking to other girls with his, he was married. He is married. He's still married. She stayed with him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that, yeah, they are still married. I think that's great though that you point that out of like, was it cheating or not cheating? I think everyone has different definitions of that, right? Like, is sliding on DM, is liking a picture, is watching pornography, like all of those are questions that you have to have with the particular partner you're with. And again, I think you and I have talked about this like in different conversations. We don't know if Adam Levine had an agreement with his wife where it was supposed to be
True.
open or polyamorous,
Hmm.
or maybe he had a hall pass. Who knows? We don't actually know, but yes, unfortunately, his DMs did get leaked, and some of them were very spicy with a lot of different people. Yeah, I mean, that's also the risk you take by putting anything on the internet.
And it's interesting as well because the question comes up, which I mean, I don't think it matters if you're a celebrity, if you're an A-lister, or you're just Joe Schmo. I think that people get caught up in the moment, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, they're sending these messages for a reason. Not that it makes it okay, obviously, if you are in a relationship or you're married to someone and you're doing these things. Or maybe it is okay if you had an agreement. Like you said, we don't know the contracts between all of these couples or like what they've agreed on. But I mean, you know, they didn't really also, I mean, I feel like Adam Levine, excuse me, is the kind of guy who doesn't actually really give a shit about what the public thinks about him.
Yeah, maybe not.
I don't think he does. Like, I think he's one of these guys where he's just like, he never addressed it. She didn't have a statement. He didn't have a statement. Whether, they're still together, I assume. Like, he did take a step back from the spotlight a little bit for a while. Like, there was some breathing room, but I don't think that he really cared, to be honest with you. I think that he just kind of was like, and I think he kind of has a bit of a, I don't know, like at times he does, and I like him, but I think he has had a douchey sort of reputation too.
Think he has after, like, what was it, Maroon 5, like, he just came out with, like, a different persona, right? Like, he came out
Yeah,
with a different vibe and, like, more of, like, rocker, edgy.
and
Yeah,
not
I
that
mean,
this is
he might
about
be different.
this, not that this is about this, but I think that no one really cared about him until he was on The Voice, right?
Yeah,
Like
you're
no one really knew they knew this love and all these like pop rock sort of songs, but like as a persona and a personality, like that show did so much for him.
yeah, you got to know more of, like, who he was as a person, right? For sure, and even just as an artist in terms of what his actual talent was. I agree, yeah. I do wonder, though, about DMs, though, like, people do slide into each other's DMs, right? There's conversations that happen on there, just like with online dating. You get sucked into, and I think you just mentioned, you get sucked into these conversations, and there's like the adrenaline, there's this deviancy that can happen. There's also like the safety of like you're in your own house doing all these things and no one can really like hurt you.
You're hiding on the couch under a blanket, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I do wonder how much of that is also just kind of like the rush of doing something like spicy without the risk, right? Because I would say most people that the DMs they send out, they would never say them out loud to a partner or to a sexual encounter. And I always find that interesting, right? We hide behind our devices and say all these spicy things, but it may not actually mean anything or go anywhere.
Oh, I think that you like hit it right there. Like I think that you actually gave the perfect explanation to why people send and receive DMs, because it's almost when you're online dating somebody, right?
Yeah.
Or people get a little more comfortable with those messages back and forth before you've actually met the person. And even if it's not spicy, even if it's not like hot, it's like that conversation back and forth. You're like, you know what? Wow, this person sounds really dynamic. Like I can't wait to go on a date with them. And then you meet them. Not always this way, but a lot of times you're sitting right across from them at that restaurant table and you're like, how is this the same person I was talking to for the last week and a half? Like, you do not measure up to what I have here on my phone, right? Like, it's just
Exactly.
so, I think that you're right. You hide behind your device, you get a little braver. Maybe it's a Friday or Saturday night. So maybe that person has, had a glass of wine or a cocktail and they're feeling a little bit braver, a little more, audacious. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Which I
Fun
think leads into that idea too of like that we've talking about like the chat bots and like all the online chat rooms that you can go on where people are incredibly brave and vulnerable and they talk about things and that can happen with our DMs, which actually I think
I was going
we-
to say, yeah.
it leads into our spill the tea question. So Will, first episode, take
Yes.
us away for our spill the tea question.
We love this. Now you can send them in. You can DM us. We're going to be clean in our responses to you, no matter what we talk about on this podcast. And it's at the Spill the Tea Pod, if I believe I said that handle correctly.
You did.
Now, this one is from a listener or viewer. 26-year-old female, slid into a guy's DMs and we've been talking for months. The vibe is flirty, but he keeps making excuses about meeting up in real life. Is he just in it for the ego boost, or do some people genuinely prefer online flings over real relationships? This is a really good one. This is a really, really good one.
It has so much layers. I'll be honest, the first red flag that went off for me is so many people create fake profiles or lead double lives online. And so you never really know whether that person is actually being genuine. Like, for all you know, he's married and has kids and is living a totally different life. And I don't want to instill fear. I don't want people to think like, oh my God, everyone I'm talking about. But you've got to do your homework and you've got to look at like if these people are real, if they like exist in the life that you think that they exist in, right? Those little moments where maybe they don't want to meet up in real life, that could tell you something.
It's like one of these situations where it's tough to answer this because I feel like most people, and I think it's human nature, like to be complimented, like to be, said, I find you attractive. Like, oh, you seem like a really cool person. You seem like a lot of fun. And I think sometimes, and this is obviously to our own faults if we're being this way with other people, I think that we do get caught up in that ego boost ourselves, where it's like, again, she doesn't really know this guy, but the hesitation is there for meeting up in real life. And I would assume you're probably thinking, okay, like, is this guy just like, looking for some ego boost? He actually doesn't. And how many girls is he sending the same message to, right? It doesn't take a lot to copy and paste. And maybe what it is like, there's so many things. I think in this situation, I think that he could be in it for the ego boost, but I don't really believe, okay, people can get pleasure or get something out of like, flirting with somebody online. But at the end of the day, I think there's nothing more special or more stimulating than human interaction, whether that's a conversation or whether that's being with somebody. I think that like, there's nothing that, will overpower that.
Yeah, I
I don't
fully
know.
agree with you.
I don't
No,
know.
I love that. You're right. I mean, the question of like, do some people genuinely prefer online opposed to in person? I think they do for certain things. Like if there's that dopamine hit, right? Like we get that when we look at our phones and somebody liked or commented on our post or sent a DM, for example, right? You get that hit of like, ooh, someone gave me an ego boost, right? So maybe this person does like what that person's giving them and that like those DMs. My other question though is why are you putting up with it for months?
Well, I was going to say you have to have your limit, right? If she's tried to get together with this guy a couple of times, 3 times over the span of a few months, he's probably just not that into you, is the truth of it. And I think that at that point, like, don't give him that satisfaction of continuing that relationship with him online, because there are other people out there who are, I'm sure, willing to meet with you in person after you've chatted to them for a little bit. And this guy is clearly showing, especially if you put it out there a few times, that he either is, living a double life or he truly is just not that interested, which is hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. But I think that the reality of it is some people are just looking at it for kicks or looking at it to like, I don't know, be turned on in that moment, but not actually willing to put in the time of the FaceTime with you.
Exactly. I'm actually going to use a phrase that I stole from my partner, which is hilarious, where he was talking to someone. If they don't want you, you don't want them. Cut it off.
Yeah.
Right? If they don't want to see you, then you don't want to see them. Set your limits, know your worth, allow yourself to say no to that. Do not go chasing for potential, or maybe he will one day respond to my DMs and want to see me. No, walk away. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Stop getting distracted by someone that won't see you after months of talking.
Was that your last sip? Because I feel like that almost
No.
sounded like the last sip.
I think so. I think I just ended up there. Yeah. That is my last sip for today on Spill the Tea. Will, what is your last sip for today?
Honestly, my last sip is because I feel like I kind of said all that I could possibly say about DMs and the takes on that. Like, obviously, don't put more into it than what you're getting in return. But I think that I'm just super happy to be finally doing this podcast with you and finally being able to kind of get back to doing some things that I've missed doing, but on our own terms and by truly no rules, just, hopefully having a fun conversation, that you can put this on, while you're driving home from work. You can put this on YouTube with a glass of wine on a Friday night, right? I want you who are listening and watching this podcast right now to truly connect with us, to slide into our DMs at the Spill the Tea Pod, and feel like you're just listening in on a conversation. Because let's be honest, what is better than that? Who doesn't want to know the goss?
I agree. And yes, join us for spilling the tea, for being raw and open, and send us your questions because we would love to talk about it.
And we, be anonymous, even if, of course, you're coming from a certain account or whatnot. Like, just leave us a little note saying, I don't want my name shared, Will and Maria. And we will fully respect that, and we'll continue to do so. If you haven't yet, follow us on socials. That's all coming up. And, just episode 1 of the Spill the Tea podcast with Will and Maria. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you soon.
We'll see you next time.
That's it for this episode of Spill the Tea. If you loved what you've heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for more candid conversations. Got a burning question? Or a topic you want us to cover? Make sure to slide into our DMs. We're always here to spill the tea. Has this episode left you wanting more? Don't worry, us too. That's why we have a whole bunch of exclusive content coming your way on Instagram and Threads. So don't forget to give us a follow at the Spill the Tea Pod, at Will Nash on Air, and at Sex Off the Pedestal to help keep you steeped until our next episode drops soon. Until then, keep the kettle warm and the tea even hotter.